Bueno, hacemos un pequeño paréntesis de la información, actualidad y la geopolítica en este momento para hablar de inversión y concretamente de un método, el value investing. Estamos hablando de que 2023 o este periodo en general puede ser el momento de invertir en value investing. Bueno, se lo vamos a preguntar a Colin Mckenzie, que es Head de Croci Intelligence en DWS. Colin, thank you so much for being here in Negocios Televisión.
Thank you for having me.
Colin, we wanted to talk to you about the croci method. I wanted to ask you, what is the croci method and what differs your method from traditional investing?
Well, I mean, value investing in general is a difficult thing to pin down. You know, people have a lot of definitions across the board. So let me try and kind of set it up in a positive way. Traditional value, I guess, has often struggled to compare across different sectors. So you've always had to have a kind of top-down focus before you can actually get into value, the actual value selection itself. What we try to do with croci is to actually move beyond what we're told about value from conventional sources such as the accounts and try and understand from an economic perspective, from due diligence on every single company that we within croci look at, and instead create a system whereby we can comfortably compare companies regardless of which sector they're in. And that allows us, I think, a lot of power to be able to forget about top-down analysis and focus entirely on bottom-up fundamentals.
How does the croci strategy capture the best of value?
Well, you know, this is really a continuation of what I was saying before, in effect. So, you know, to allow us to be able to do an entirely bottom-up focus on value, it means that instead of saying, you know, I want to focus on 3, 4, or 5 different sectors or industries that are themselves interesting, I don't care about those industries. What's interesting is if you look at the cheapest decile of companies, whether it's in the US, whether it's globally, you find a whole array of different sectors represented there, not just the traditionally cheapest sectors. You can have a very expensive sector with still 1 or 2 cheap companies in it. So what we can do within croci is say, well, you know, using our standardized valuation metrics, which focus on the kind of company's economic level of valuation, in other words, what's really driving cash flows, we can use that to identify the cheapest companies, and that will allow us to pick out some of these very cheap companies, even in very expensive sectors. And so you'll end up with a very different sort of portfolio to a conventional value portfolio. To give you an idea, something like a kind of 50% overlap between the cheapest, let's say, 100 companies globally on a conventional valuation metric and the 100 cheapest companies on a croci metric.
Lately, very few people spoke about value investing. Everyone was talking about growth investing. It was what was working at the time. But is it now the time to invest with this method, with value investing?
We saw a huge comeback towards fundamentals in 2022. And in fact, I noticed it beginning at the end of 2021, at a moment when, following the pandemic, and that really upended the visibility of earnings, when that visibility of earnings improved substantially towards the end of 2021, then our understanding of value within croci substantially started to outperform. And I think this should continue for a number of reasons. I mean, the ideal environment for value investing is when liquidity is coming down, and obviously we're moving from a very high liquidity environment towards, you know, quantitative tightening. And on top of that, having an inflationary backdrop typically means that the market focuses not only on value but also quality, which is another thing which croci tends to reflect.
I wanted to ask you also what factors are right now favoring this type of strategy.
Right. And so in general, croci will typically be exposed to quality and value. By quality, you know, you can define it a number of different ways, whether you want to think about profitability or financial leverage being low, or whether it's just investment or earnings quality or sustainability of earnings. All of those sorts of things are typically going to be kind of croci exposed factors. And so in an environment when you've got, you know, higher interest rates, when you've got inflation over around 2%, 2% tends to be the threshold that we see over which value and quality tend to perform better than growth. You have a very, very well set up environment for croci strategies. And I'd add to that the fact that there isn't much growth in the kind of corporate economic environment either. And so the absence of growth, the presence of low liquidity, the presence of inflation are all very, very strong leading indicators for croci-style strategies to perform as quality and value tend to do better.
So right now is the time to invest in value investing. Thank you so much, Colin Mckenzie, Head of Croci Intelligence at DWS. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bueno, nos decía Colin, entre otras cosas, que por la falta de liquidez o la reducción